Yo, it's Two Side Anime here, and before I start the video, I want to say that Gojo is probably one of my favorite new gen characters. There's so much to love when it comes to the character of Gojo, but one of my favorite things about Gojo's character, the amount of layers that Gege has added to his character over the years. I personally enjoy when the author takes a character that should be one-dimensional and turns around and makes him a multifaceted character. A multifaceted person has many abilities or personalities with many sides. Each part of the multifaceted person relates to them in a way that shapes their identity. This definition explains Gojo's character. Sometimes I understand how easy it is for people not to understand Gojo's character. But this video isn't about Gojo's character. That's a video for another day. Today's topic is about how everything that happened after the Shibuya incident is Gojo's fault. And I know this probably sounds obvious and you probably heard this a million times, but the reason why everything is Gojo's fault is because Gojo failed to become the monster necessary to protect his friends, his students, and his loved ones. Even though his students always allowed Gojo to become the sort of monster they needed to protect the world, Gojo never stepped into the monster world completely. He always kept a bit of his humanity, and you can blame a lot of this on Geto during the hidden inventory arc when he stopped Gojo from killing the cult members clapping away at Riko's death. Let me rephrase this better. Gojo chose to become a monster in chapter 261 when he needed to become the monster, discard his humanity way earlier in the series. When Gojo finally chose to become a monster, it was already too late, and that's why all these events fall on him. It really adds a tragic layer to Gojo's character, top of the solitude that he's felt his entire life. To understand what becoming a monster is and discarding your humanity, you have to understand humanity means something different to every single one of the characters within the Jujutsu Kaisen verse. What they believe what makes them human differs from each character, just like their domains. Before we dive into the aspect of humanity that Gojo was clinging to that ultimately held him back from solving all the issues in the Shibuya incident arc, we have to understand what discarding your humanity and becoming a monster is in Jujutsu Kaisen. The concept of human versus monsters was introduced with the disaster curses. Then it's followed up during Jogo's death in the afterlife, where Sukuna tells Jogo he should have burned everything down to a cinder, discarding everything else and cutting down any obstacle in his way. The conversation of becoming a monster slipped in during the Culling games multiple times. First time was with Megumi when he achieved his first kill. And the conversation shows up again with Yuta at the end of his victory. Yuro tells Yuta that he's at his limit of his power, and the only way he can surpass his limit is becoming a monster. And then Sukuna appeared in a devious form, being described as a calamity, ultimately showing the difference between the ancient sorcerers and the modern sorcerers. The modern sorcerers are weaker than the ancient sorcerers because they want to hang on to their humanity, while the ancient sorcerers discarded their humanity a long time ago and they became something like monsters, achieving great powers. Maneuvering our way through the story, the theme of monster versus humanity pops up in multiple important fights, like Sukuna versus Urozu, Sukuna versus Kashimo, and Urame versus Hikari, where Urame explains that the reason why modern day sorcerers are weak is because they cling to their humanity. And I hate to admit, Urame is right. When you take a look at a character like Sukuna, only one word comes to your mind, and the word is divine. Sukuna is able to look at life through the eyes of a god. This is why anytime he fights anyone, he's able to give them the enlightenment they need to cross over into the afterlife. Look at what he did to Jogo. He made that man cry. He answered Kashimo's long life question that he couldn't solve on his own. He gave Urozu a satisfying death. He saw the potential in Megumi as a character, pushing Megumi to become stronger. Sukuna understood in order to become a god within this verse, you had to walk down the path of a monster. There's another character within the Jujutsu Kaisen verse that understood this concept, and his name was Geto. The conditions of Jujutsu Kaisen sorcerers and the society that they live within forced Geto to discard his humanity in order to achieve his dream. his dream of creating a world without curses. And it's ironic, after he was killed and his body was taken over Kenjaku said something very profound. Chapter 160, Kenjaku says the space between dream and reality is a curse. This was the curse that haunted Geto as a character. Geto wanted to create a world without curses, and in order to achieve that dream, he had to destroy and kill every human on planet Earth. Geto was unable to be happy in the world that he was living in because of curses, so the only way he can achieve his happiness was by discarding his humanity and breaking the curse and achieving that space between a dream and his reality. See, at first, when Geto turned to the dark side, Gojo really didn't want to understand what forced his best friend to become evil. Not until chapter 261, when Gojo finally accepted that when Geto went down this path of becoming a monster, Gojo was left behind. Gojo was left stagnant. And that's why right before Gojo goes off to kill the higher-ups, the first person he thinks about is Geto. See, Gojo became too comfortable playing the hero, playing it safe, playing by the rules within a system that he could have easily destroyed if he forced his dominance, being the strongest sorcerer of modern day. This created a chink in Gojo's armor. The character that was once untouchable can now be touched once you played on his weakness as a human. And I know Yuji as a character goes against this concept, but for a character like Gojo, something that he should have learned at the beginning of the series, not in chapter 261, which shows you the failure on his part, because the whole plan of Gojo being sealed by Kenjaku and the disaster curses all played on his weakness as a human, his humanity. Jogo said it perfectly. Gojo was only comfortable with curses killing humans. Gojo wasn't comfortable with humans dying by his hands. This is why Gojo didn't go all out in the Shibuya fight, and this was the nail in the coffin for every character within the Jujutsu Kaisen verse. See, after witnessing Sukuna versus Gojo, we learned how powerful Gojo was. That fight that took place between him and the disaster curses, he was holding himself back because he didn't want to hurt the humans within the area. But that was his mistake. Gojo accepted that he had to become a monster in chapter 261. But in that moment in Shibuya, if he finally decided that it's time to become a monster, the series would have ended right there. And before you guys start yelling at me, I do understand that's the point of Gojo's character and his journey. His journey sets an example for the main character like Yuji. No matter how powerful Yuji gets, Yuji's always going to cling on to his humanity. And that's what makes Yuji, Yuji. And that's what makes Gojo his teacher. See, Yuji didn't see that side of Gojo killing the higher-ups. Yuta did, and that affected Yuta to become a monster and taking over his master's body. Yuji will be the opposite, and that's a video for another day. The point of this video is to show you guys the tragic journey of Gojo, a character that was born to be the strongest, and his strength isolated him from the rest of humanity. He still clinged on to the ideas of being a human, even though he was isolated from them. He still tried to help, love, and create a brighter future, accepting the fact that nobody will ever understand him. That was Gojo's curse, the space between his dream and his reality, and ultimately, he was cut down by a greater force that discarded every concept of being a human. But that's it for the video. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'm out.